Sometimes you're not stuck in life. You're just looking in the wrong direction. For 20 years, Harold Whitman sat at the same desk, in the same office. Same routine. Same silence. Same view in front of him. A large window stood right beside his desk, but it didn't show the sky. It showed a plain brick wall. Every single day, he worked without thinking about it. Because over time, he stopped questioning anything. And when you stop questioning life, you stop noticing it too. One day, a new employee joined the office. Her name was Elena. She was quiet, but observant. On her first week, she looked at Harold and then at the window behind him, and she asked, "Doesn't it ever bother you, looking at that wall every day?" Harold smiled lightly. "I don't really notice it anymore." Elena paused for a second and said, "That might be the problem." Then she walked away. But those words stayed behind. That night, Harold couldn't stop thinking. For the first time in years, he actually remembered the window. Not as background, but as something real. The next morning, he looked at it again. Just a wall. Nothing special. But now, he couldn't unsee it. 20 years. The same view. No change. No curiosity. Just routine. And suddenly, something felt wrong about that. A few days later, the office experienced a power failure. Everything shut down. No computers, no noise, no work. Just silence. People stood around not knowing what to do. Harold stood up and walked to the window. Elena followed him without saying anything. They both stood there quietly, and after a long pause, she asked again, "Have you ever wondered what's actually beyond that wall?" This time, Harold didn't answer quickly, because for the first time, he didn't have a reason not to wonder. That evening, Harold didn't go straight home. He walked. He turned down streets he had ignored for years, past places he had never stopped to notice. A small cafe with warm lights. A quiet park with people sitting peacefully. A bookstore he had walked past hundreds of times. And suddenly, it hit him. These places had always been here, but he had never truly seen them, because he wasn't looking. Over the next few days, Harold couldn't ignore what he had realized. His life hadn't been bad. It had been repetitive. And repetition creates comfort, but it also creates blindness. You stop questioning. You stop exploring. You stop growing. And slowly, without noticing, your world becomes smaller. Not because life is small, but because your view is. The realization wasn't easy. It was uncomfortable. Because now, Harold had to face a difficult truth. He had spent years living on autopilot. Not because he had to, but because it was easier, safer, more predictable. And fear began to whisper, "What if you change things and it goes wrong?" But another voice answered quietly, "What if you stay the same and nothing ever changes. One morning, Harold sat at his desk and stared at the wall again. But this time, he didn't feel stuck. He felt aware. And awareness changes everything. Because once you see clearly, you can't go back to living blindly. That day, Harold made a decision. Not impulsive, not emotional, but necessary. He chose to leave. The first days were difficult. Everything felt unfamiliar. New city, new environment, new people. He made mistakes, felt unsure, questioned himself. But something was different this time. He was present. He was learning. He was growing. And for the first time in years, he felt alive. As time passed, Harold began to understand something deeper. Life doesn't change when circumstances change. It changes when perspective changes. The same world he once ignored now felt full of possibility. Because he was finally looking beyond what was in front of him. Years later, Harold returned to his old office building. He walked past the same entrance, the same hallway, the same desk. And there it was, the window, the wall, unchanged. And inside, people were still sitting there, working, repeating, existing, just like he once did. Before leaving, Harold wrote a simple note and left it behind. It said, "You are not stuck in life. You are stuck in what you refuse to question." He placed it gently on the desk, took one last look at the window, and walked away. Sometimes, the biggest change in your life doesn't come from moving forward. It comes from finally choosing to look in a different direction.